In this video we're going to look at using anthropometric and ergonomic data. Just to define what what specifically anthropometric data is in relation to ergonomics. This is a branch of ergonomics that deals with body shape and size. People come in all shapes and sizes, so you need to take these physical characteristics into account whenever you design anything that someone will use. From something as simple as a pencil to something as complex as a car. I've given a recommended method of use for your ergonomics and anthropometrics. So you want to decide who you are designing for. By this stage you should have already decided that, so you've got a really good idea. You want to decide which body measurements are relevant to you, and you can make a list of these before you begin your research. You want to decide whether you're designing for the average person, which we'll have a look at in a minute, or whether you're designing for the extremes. So that will be either the 50th percentile or the 5th to 95th percentile. And then you're going to move on to researching and documenting. Just focusing on number 3 quickly, you may see graphs a little bit like this, and this shows you a 50th percentile. Now that is the mean, the average, so if you take all the data that has been collected in whatever resource that you use, and then you average it, that'll be the average height. Most products are designed around the 50th percentile, so that the mass of population can use it. The smallest, or the 5th percentile, is at the bottom of the graph over here, and the 95th percentile is at the top of the graph over here. So depending whether for some specific reason you need to design for the 5th percentile or the 95th, but for most of you the 50th percentile will be the data that you want to focus on. So I've given a couple of examples here, and we'll link this slideshow within the website. So you might have a look at what particular use you want to make. So for example, if you want something to be within easy reach, you can think about some design examples like vehicle dashboard, shelving, etc. Then from that you can extrapolate out, well, what actual data might be useful for me. So arm length and shoulder length would be pretty useful to be working out something that needs to be within easy reach. And your design in that case would need to take account of the smallest, the 5th percentile. Because for everybody to have something within easy reach, then you use the 5th percentile, and in that way anybody moving up to the 50th or the 95th percentile would still be within easy reach. So the rest of this should be fairly self-explanatory. You can do your own research, and you can really filter down, and you're going to need to use your Google skills. But I've given some examples here which you can use, and I'll run through those just quickly now and how you might want to use them. So we'll have a look at this one first. This is essentially the process I've just talked about, but giving more detail. So if you're still misunderstanding, this is a really good place to start looking through and to read. From here, there's a couple of other resources that are useful. We've uploaded some scans here of some pretty standard data which may be useful to you. That's linked within here, then you'll need to be logging in using your school account. I'll talk a little bit about how you might want to use those in a second. And then this here is a link, and you'll find lots of this if you do some research, to a government document, but this is an enormous 174 page document. So generally if you press Ctrl F if you're on a PC, and let's say I'm looking for an arm, so we can look at arm length, and that is then page 85. You can go to page 85 and then you can find the data that you need. It's worth reading a little bit at the beginning of this document, just in terms of the introduction and how this, where this data has actually come from, because then that will help you understand here. But there's a really good amount of detail here which will cover a lot of what you want. You may specifically look at different genders, or you may look at specific ages to then manipulate this data as well. That really depends on what use you're going to be making. So just to finish off, things to remember. It's worth following that process through that we looked at earlier. Ensure you explain why you have chosen these particular bits of information. Don't fall into the trap of just going and finding some pretty pictures, dragging them in and thinking that that is going to gain you marks for research. You want to find actual information that is useful and relevant to your project. Where possible, make things visual so you can insert graphs and pictures. A lot of the time you'll see the curved graph with the percentiles on it. That can be dragged in, and then you can highlight what information on that is useful to you. And some of those pictures I showed you earlier, you'll find lots of those, and then within those pictures again, you're going to want to highlight the key information that is relevant to you. So just repeating essentially what I've just said, ensure you highlight key points, and you're going to want to conclude your findings, including how this will influence your design moving forward. Just doing the research itself is not enough to gain you marks throughout the whole of your NEA. You need to show its relevance, and like we've said earlier, you are telling the story of your project.